In this video, I want to talk about politics. Now, why do I want to talk about politics? Look, even though as believers we are in the world but not of the world, realize that we're still in the world. So we need to be aware what's going on in the world. Not because we are invested in the world, but because we're in it. So it's wise to know what's going on. Now look, what is politics? I'm not going into the Greek meaning of the word politics and all of that. What I'm going to talk about in this recording is the following. Politics is diversion from violence. That is what politics comes down to. Let me give an example. In ancient times, in what today call Central Europe, that is the region where today you have Germany, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Denmark, that that area. In the past, in the far past, you had Germanic tribes, white tribes living there. Now, I don't know the exact number of population, but briefly before the Roman Empire emerged, there may have been around maybe 5 million white people in the whole area, including Scandinavia. Let's include Scandinavia also in it. So there were small tribes living here and there. They traded with one another. Those tribes had their chieftains or their kings that governed them. And there was one big issue amongst the tribes, and that was that there were no borders. For example, you can have a tribe called Chatti, at least that's the Roman name for it, and a Chatti tribe lives between those and those rivers. So everyone knows between those two rivers, that's where the Chatti people live. But what if the Chatti people increase in size, in population, and now some of the Chatti people move elsewhere? And let's say that they now live between two mountain ranges that belongs to another tribe. It doesn't really belong to the tribe, but the other tribe lives there. There is no way they can tell that tribe you're not allowed, people from the Chatti tribe, you're not allowed to settle here because nobody really owns the forest. Because most of Europe was still forest back then. It was still, you could call virgin land. It wasn't messed around much by urbanization. So what happened afterwards was that there was tribal conflict between the tribes. Also in what we today call Scandinavia, the areas that comprise Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Tribal conflict was common. In ancient Norway, it was between the clans lived in the mountain ranges and those that lived more on the plain near the coast. In ancient Sweden, it was between tribes living around the lakes. Who has the right to fish where? You had various conflicts. And then the Roman Empire emerged as a threat, and the political leaders of those tribes who were pagan joined the Roman Empire. But to the public, the Germanic tribes, it was as if Rome was a threat, and that unified the Germanic tribes against this enemy in the south, an enemy they became financially and economically dependent upon. So what happened was that the leaders of the Germanic peoples, as well as the leaders in the Roman Empire, they had an agreement with one another that they would divert the violence of the Germanic peoples towards Rome, towards the Roman Empire. And in exchange, in the Roman Empire, they would use the Germanic threat as a motivation for the Roman military. So now you had a whole industry in the military that was designed on keeping Germanic invaders out. Even though the Germanic peoples were dependent on the prosperity of the Roman Empire, even though many Germanic people crossed the borders into the Roman Empire to be part of the Roman world. So the Germanic peoples were not a threat to Rome at all, nor to its empire. But the people had to believe that Germanic tribes were a threat, and because of that, many young men wanted to join the military, and because of that, the economy circulated. Armor could be made, weapons could be made. We also had chefs that had to travel around with the soldiers. You also had prostitutes go along with them. You had milk carriers. So a whole economy emerged around the Rhine and the Danube River based on this Germanic threat. And amongst the Germanic tribes, there was this ambivalent attitude towards the Roman Empire. Of course, there were criminals crossing into the Roman border from time to time, but it wasn't as if the Germanic tribes were such a big threat to Rome. So that's politics. There is violence amongst the population, there is conflict, and if you want to divert the violence away to another object, that is what politics comes down to. So politics is not about solving any issues, nor facing any real life challenge. A lot of people, they vote for politicians thinking that those politicians, as well as those political parties, are going to make efforts to solve issues. And I've just explained to you, politics is not about solving anything. Politics is a game. And in this game, you convince the masses that the root of a problem lies elsewhere than it really is. So in ancient times, the disunity amongst the Germanic tribes, even though they all were Germanic, they all were white, the disunity of the Germanic tribes was blamed on this world power called Rome, who took over the world's economy. And Rome played along by establishing those military towns here and there. And Rome conducted false flags, so Rome played this part. And you had the Germanic leaders also playing their part, even though the Germanic leaders sent their sons to Rome for education, and they had deals with the Roman Empire, so they benefited from the Roman economy. While the people, Germanic people, didn't notice this. Well, some of them would have noticed it because not all people are dumb. So the real issue in ancient Germania was that there were no obvious agreements who lived where. And there were no regulations on access to water. Now, in the Roman Empire, there was a real solution that was aqueducts. An aqueduct could transport water from kilometers away, hundreds of kilometers away, to various places. So everyone in the Roman Empire had access to fresh drinking water and public baths. In ancient Germania, such things did not exist. So people had to carry water with them, which is quite heavy. Water can be quite heavy if you need to carry it in buckets, but that's what they had to do. So if you had a Germanic village that was not close to a river, they were in trouble. So what should have happened in ancient Germania was that they should have been inspired by the Roman Empire and built similar things to redirect the flow, the fresh water from rivers towards villages. If that would have happened, there wouldn't have been any conflicts anymore. But because this didn't happen and there were no salt agreements who lived where, that was really what caused all those conflicts. But here's the thing. If the Germanic leaders would have fixed the issue, that means this coming to agreement who lives where, and also diverting fresh water from rivers towards villages, if they would have done that, then the people would begin to ask, why do we need those Germanic leaders? Because those Germanic leaders had their leverage over the population, but because there was conflict between the tribes. That's why those kings were seen as leaders to protect them against the danger from other tribes. So all those Germanic leaders They were all pagan and they were all in one club, and that club was we all pretend to be at war with one another, and because of that, conflicts between our people will remain, and we retain our wealth and leverage over the people because of those artificial conflicts. Because the moment all Germanic people had access to fresh drinking water, that means that they could farm better, that means they could all be financially and economically autonomous, that they begin to ask, why do we need those Germanic kings? What's the purpose of it? So in politics, there's another thing you need to know. Not only is politics diverting attention away so that you think that the root of a problem lies elsewhere than it really is, in politics, conflicts are kept alive to benefit the wealthy. So politics is a game to distract people, and it's a game to use this distraction to get a hold on people. That is what politics is all about. So next time you think you're going to vote for some party because they made those lovely promises of what they stand for and you agree with what they stand for, listen. All politics is a diversion of conflict. All politics is gaining a leverage over the population through this diversion of conflict. That is all it is. So the one thing you need to ask yourself is, okay, if you have this political party that talks about ending child labor, raising wages, getting with affordable healthcare, they come with all those promises. What you need to ask yourself is the following. If this party has all those answers to all the problems that afflict society, then why are they still alive? I mean, if the healthcare in a nation is bad because the hospitals are privatized and because that hospitals are of bad quality, and only the rich have access to healthcare, that means that the owners of those private hospitals, they benefit from the sickness of the population. So if you come with solutions that will benefit the health of the population, all those cartels that manage and own those private hospitals, they will turn on you. They'll begin to threaten you. They will send mercenaries after you. So those cartels are not going to sit back and allow you to take away their leverage and their relevance. They're not going to allow it to happen. So when you see a political party and a political leader speaking sense and coming up with stuff that can really solve things, the only reason he is still there on its platform is if he is part of the deception. If he is real, sooner or later he'll be assassinated or he will disappear. One of the two. Anyone that's real in politics will not make it. Nobody makes it in politics because they are real and they want real solutions for the people. Only those who are part of the deception, only they make it in politics. In politics, there are groups of people who have an easy existence, so they don't have to work every day, they don't have to face existential challenges that most people do. And the reason why they have this easy comfort is at expense of the community. So they exploit the community without the community being aware they're being exploited. So this is the black magic they're using on the population. And the only way they can retain this grip on the population is if the population is distracted from seeing what's going on. Because the moment the population notices what's going on, the population will turn on them. So what they often do is they will come up with a boogeyman, for example, a serial killer or a grievous child molester that goes around raping children. They will come up with some bad guy to give the people to dump their negativity upon. Because once the people have a bad guy that they all hate together, the people feel relieved and the people will want to be left alone. And by doing this, people don't want to hear that their own leaders are exploiting them. They don't want to hear it, because even without the boogeyman, there's something too confronting that they don't want to face, and they don't want to have to go. They don't want to face the fight of dealing with those leaders, because they don't want to face themselves that they are complicit in this thing also. You cannot oppress a population over a long period of time without somewhere there's being some consent amongst the oppressed for their condition. You can oppress someone against their will, that's what oppression is, but if it continues for multiple generations, then there is something amongst the community that people agree on, and this agreement is passed on to the next generations. So people don't want to face this. As long as they have a boogeyman to hate, and they have food in their belly, and they can sleep, they have clothes, they have water, they will think, okay, this is fine. No matter if they indeed are exploited and it costs them their long-term health and it shortens their lifespan. That's how worldlings are. They often just choose the easiest way out. So just realize that the masses don't want to be informed. This whole idea of democracy, that the masses will make informed, rational decisions that will benefit their long-term well-being, if you just allow them to, it is baloney. There is no evidence that supports this. This is a piece of propaganda that they're using to trick you into voting. Now, voting can have an impact, but not the impact you expect. Because remember what I've said, politics is all about diversion. It's about a group or groups of people retaining their leverage over the public with the public's consent. Now, the public does not literally consent to being exploited and drained while they have an easy life. No, of course not. They manufacture the consent of the public through deception. So the only way you can be a good politician according to the world is when you divert attention successfully away from what's really going on. Let me give an example. In the 1990s, 1994, Bill Clinton came with this 3 strikes you're out, a reform. And since then, most US states had an increase in arrests and people that went to jail. Imprisonment increased throughout the United States. And the idea was, with this regulation, it will be safer on the streets. What happened? The opposite happened. What happened was that many people were imprisoned for minor offenses that did not require a prison sentence. So now you had a whole prison complex throughout the United States filled with people that shouldn't be there, people who otherwise could be beneficial to the community for the economy. They were taken away from their families. So you had more broken families, you had more fatherless homes, you had a disconnect between people because the policy was obviously oppressive. And the people were divided on how they should be managed. And of course, Afro-Americans were targeted more than others, but we know why, due to institutionalized racism. So now you have people in the United States who stole a candy bar, for example, and they went to prison for years. Or they smoked weed in their car, while weed was forbidden in that state, and now they have to spend 20 years in jail. While any other individual only gets maybe 2 or 3 months conditional. So this has been going on in the United States, and now people are dealing with the results of it. But why did Bill Clinton come with that agreement to begin with? That is something people need to figure out why. Some would say, well, it was to target the black community, or there's a deeper reason for it. And I'm going to explain it to you. The United States was never an economic unity. Never. The United States was always the joke of the British Empire. So you had British bankers and British corporations that used the United States to launder their money and avoid taxes. It is after the Second World War that many British investors really relocated their investments from the British military to the US military, that the USA became this economic and military superpower. And that was based on an economic bubble. So it was not something that could be sustained over long periods of time. The only reason the USA managed to sustain this economic bubble was by invading other countries and forcing them to comply to this bubble, like they did with Chile. But actually, the CIA did it for them. So eventually, in the 1990s, when this bubble collapsed, in Asia it already began, the leaders of the United States realized, okay, sooner or later, this is going to lead to a big crash here, and this greatness of the United States, which was fabricated after the Second World War by Hollywood, is going to fade. And when that fades, there's going to be a lot of angry people, a lot of angry white people that will lose it. So what did they do? They came up with this policy to distract the people. And because of that, another problem emerged, namely too many people in prison that shouldn't be there. And that led to other social problems in the community. So now they created other problems to divert people from the one thing they didn't want people to realize, that the greatness of the United States was about to be over soon. Then there was 9/11, which was another distraction. And then came 2008, and the bubble was over for good. So you see how it works? So in politics, it's all about diversion. It's all about distraction. It's all about preserving the interests of the groups that have agreements with evil spirits. That is what it's all about. So, one way to circumvent this game is by asking constructive questions. Because, believe it or not, you can have influence on what happens in politics, but you can't have influence in the sense that you are going to change things for the better. Because politics is a game that's not meant to really solve anything. What you can do is, if they come up with some policy that's going to be harmful, keep asking constructive questions. And once your questions and your research reveals that this thing cannot benefit anyone, and the public becomes aware of it, now they have to change their tactic and come up with another distraction. That is what you can do. Don't think you join a political party to be nominated and you are able to change things. First of all, that construct called the political party is built to deceive the people. Nobody that's elected or nominated can solve anything. And here's another thing. Some of the issues that plague the community are caused by the community itself. So some of those things, those political leaders cannot solve. Let's say that you have a Mexican minority somewhere in a US state, and that Mexican minority is a scapegoat. Why? Because the people that live there in a state, the overwhelming majority, they don't want to face things in life. They just want someone to victimize and feel at ease. It doesn't matter what the political leaders do, the people there need to realize, okay, we need to face our stuff. But if the people don't want to face things, then even if the political leaders would take up a stance to benefit the Mexican minority, sooner or later it's not the Mexican minority anymore, but it may be blacks. If it's not blacks, then it will be Arabs. So what happens is that there is a limit to what political leaders can do. And there are things only the public can do. But the public often don't want to hear this. They just want relief. So, even if you would have politicians who are completely sincere, they would not be tolerated by the people. Because the people don't want to hear that they are collectively responsible for what they allow and what they enable. So, politics is about diversion. Never put your trust in it. If you have to deal with politics, deal with it in a wise way to do the will of the Heavenly Father. Well, that's it for now. Keep on agreeing with Christ and be at peace.